Hello. People have written to me and asked me, how do I get an academic post in the UK, especially if I'm applying for this role from outside the UK and outside countries that are, it's typically easy to get this role from. So the US, Canada, and Australia. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in this video. My name is Dr. Jonathan L. Aja. I'm a trained surgeon, medical educator. I've held several posts in academia within the UK, and currently I am also an NHS doctor. So let's look at this now. Now, a few things you have to consider. Getting an academic role is just like any role. So it starts with first an assessment of your CV, your CV by yourself. So the very first thing you want to do is you need to do a self-assessment of your CV. Now, once you've done a self-assessment of your CV, you would need to now compare what you have in your CV with what is typically expected. And I'll walk through that. Now, in any CV, there are about 4 or 5 parts. So the first part of your CV would be your personal information, isn't it? So things like where you live, how old are you, and things like that. Now, not all CVs need to have this. The second part of your CV is generally for an academic CV is your education. So here you want to look at first degree, second degree, third degree, professional qualifications, and things like that. And then your work experience is key. And then other things like output in academia. So conferences you've attended, papers you've published, public engagement and other things. And, references and a few other things. So once you've done this, you need to now make a judgment or ask someone that is familiar with what is expected. Once you've gone through this stage, the next stage is you want to do what you call a job search plus. You want to look for roles which you are a good fit. I advise that you look for roles which you are either an exceptional fit, an excellent fit, or a very good fit. Now, how do you decide this? That's quite difficult, but that's where people like myself come in, coaches, and then we can explain that for you. If you look for roles where you are just a good fit, it's very likely that the market forces may not allow it to be easy for you to come in, to get into interview and clinch that job as the best candidate. Now, with that said, let's assume you've gotten a couple of roles you've found. So what you want to do now is draft your applications. And typically, you have a few things in an academic job application. You are going to have to write most times a personal statement or a support statement based on, we go back now to the job site. So when the job is advertised, generally you would have a couple of parts in the job. You have something called the job description, which precisely tries to, it's not perfect, describe what the role is about, the operations of the role, the expectations of the role, the highs and lows. There's something called the person's specification, which describes generally the person that is likely to be able to perform the key tasks of that role. And the person's specifications, you can break them down into two, and which are, there's something called essential and desirable. Now, generally, essential requirements in the person specifications are needed for you to get to be shortlisted. Desirable gives you advantages. So it's important to be able to understand this. And then you can have further information on the role, such as external and internal relationships and things like that. So this is key. The draft of your application or your personal statement needs to be seen addressing these points. So whoever is reviewing and would progress your application needs to see that your personal statement is addressing this point. The other thing is the person specification will have some expectations that would require certain areas of your CV. So for instance, qualifications, yeah? And then, for instance, again, work experience. And one of the areas that is key is the area of teaching qualification or teaching fellowship or associate fellowship. And then, of course, teaching experience, depending on the seniority of the role. So this sort of like breaks down the things. So remember, the job search is you want to first do a self-assessment of your CV, yeah, against what is typically expected of a UK CV. You want to ask someone that is experienced to give a judgment on your CV, how well it aligns. Then you want to go on and do a job search, yeah? When you do a job search, you want to focus on roles where you are exceptional, excellent, or very good fit, rather than the common good fit. Because if you are coming from outside, I would assume you want to bring in something extra. And once you've decided this, you pick the jobs you want to apply for, you need to carefully read the information and make sure you understand the job description. You make sure you understand the person specification, essential, desirable, further information. And you want to go back and merge that with your CV and make sure that you tick especially all the essentials. Yes, with that said, you go to the personal statement. Your personal statement needs to be seen addressing whatever they have in the job description. And in addition, any other thing that has been requested. So this is a summary, the first part of the things you need to understand if you are hoping to, apply for an academic role. The second part of this video, I'm going to dive deeply using a job as an example on how that can be done. So thank you and stick with me.